A little while ago, I made a video where I gave completely random new types to some Pokemon and then made some new designs for those Pokemon with those types. It was really fun seeing what it could look like if these classic Pokemon we all know and love had been given a type that is completely different to the one that they officially have. And that is exactly why we are here to do it again today. We're going to be using the same setup as last time, and I have got some awesome Pokemon with some awesome new types to show you guys today. So let's go ahead and take a look. Before we continue though, a big shout out goes to today's lovely sponsor who helped make these designs and this video happen, War Thunder. War Thunder is the most comprehensive vehicle combat game ever made, and you can play it for free right now on PC, Xbox, and PlayStation. You can play with more than 2,000 tanks, planes, helicopters, and ships in dynamic combined arms PvP battles. And not only are there that many vehicles, but each one is highly detailed right down to the smallest components, making for some super immersive combat and gameplay. You can even customize your vehicles as well, with hundreds of different options to choose from. War Thunder offers intense PvP battles for all playstyles and immersion levels, so no matter how you like to play, they got you covered. I personally love how detailed the game looks, and the sound design is honestly amazing and really immersive. So download and play War Thunder right now for free with the link in the description below, and new players, regardless of platform, and even players who haven't logged in for at least 6 months, can get a large bonus pack including premium vehicles, premium account status, and more with my link below, but only for a limited time. So be sure to check that out today, and a big thank you to War Thunder for supporting the channel. Okay, so really quick, just in case you didn't see that previous video, which if you haven't yet, I would recommend checking out with the card on screen, we're going to be giving completely random new types to 3 Pokemon in this video. 2 of them I have predetermined myself, and 1 of them is going to be randomly determined along with its type, just to add to the fun. In the previous video, I also only did mono types just to make sure that the type combinations that we were pairing with these Pokemon wasn't anything too crazy, but I decided to toy with the idea of dual types just a little bit this time around. So one of our Pokemon is also going to have a random dual type as well. With all of that out of the way though, let's go ahead and get into the Pokemon themselves, and the first one that I want to showcase today is Garchomp. Now, Garchomp is one of the ones I personally chose myself, and the reason is, Garchomp is simply just cool. Garchomp is literally one of the coolest Pokemon of all time, and I feel like there is a lot more potential for its coolness if we were to simply just change up its type, and I feel like there's a lot of potential for a Garchomp of various different types. So I went ahead and consulted the random type generator to see what type we were going to be giving Garchomp today, and I ended up with the Fire type. Now, the Fire type, just like Garchomp as a Pokemon, is one of the coolest Pokemon types that is out there. So this is actually going to feed in really well to what I wanted to do with Garchomp in this video, and that is explore its potential coolness that it could have if it were to have other types. And with that said, this is what Garchomp could look like if it was a Fire type Pokemon. Now, first things first, I gotta give a shout out to DarknWindie, as he was the person that I commissioned to draw the artwork for these designs that you're gonna see in this video, and he does great stuff, obviously, so be sure to check him out with the links in the description. When it comes to our Fire-type Garchomp though, I personally feel like it turned out great. Like I said, Garchomp is kind of the epitome of a cool Pokemon, and the Fire-type is kind of the epitome of a cool Pokemon type, so mashing them together is kind of like the epitome of what cool is, basically. And I decided to really lean in on that philosophy by giving this Garchomp design open flames on its head and its tail, as well as giving it a really cool dark gray / black coloration, because as we know and have even seen in Pokemon on occasion, black dragons are just about as cool can get. Obviously, this design could also retain the dragon typing as well to be a fire dragon type, but in terms of just the simple idea of a fire type Garchomp and what that could be, I feel like this is a really good representation of the potential that that has, and just the potential of a Garchomp of different types as well. So if in future games and generations, if we ever happen to get a regional variant of the Garchomp line, I feel like giving them the fire type would be a really good way to go. And if that ended up looking anything like this, I would be a very happy camper. Even though this Garchomp does look really cool though, we still have 2 more Pokemon to cover. And the next one I am really excited about because it is none other than my boy, Cyndaquil. Now obviously I am extremely biased with this pick because Cyndaquil is my favorite Pokemon, but I couldn't not take the opportunity to see what Cyndaquil could look like if it was in fact a completely different type to the fire type that it actually has in the official games. On top of that, I've also decided to get a little bit crazier with this selection because it is going to be the Pokemon that we give the random dual type to. So not only is Cyndaquil going to have a different type here, it's going to have an additional type as well. And the type that I ended up generating when I went to the random Pokemon type generator was Flying Electric. So I had to figure out how to create a flying electric type Cyndaquil that somehow made sense and wasn't a complete abomination. This is truly the kind of thing that was the reason why I wanted to do these videos, because flying electric definitely does not go with Cyndaquil. But nevertheless, as a Cyndaquil aficionado, I decided to take on the challenge. And what I ended up coming up with, I'm personally pretty proud of. And this is what it ultimately ended up looking like. I would like all of you to say hello to the adorableness that is a flying electric type Cyndaquil. Now my approach with this design as far as the challenge that it presented primarily had to do with the flying type, because how are you going to make a very land-based Pokemon like Cyndaquil be able to fly without just giving it wings and calling it a day? I definitely didn't want to do that because that is pretty basic and wouldn't really make sense with Cyndaquil as a Pokemon to have wings, so I did some brainstorming, and storming is the idea that popped into my head that I thought could work, because I thought it would just work really well with Cyndaquil's body shape and design and overall cuteness as a Pokemon to put its body inside of a storm cloud, and instead of it being able to fly with wings, have it be able to float instead. The mental image that this idea gave me was honestly adorable, so I decided to roll with it, and I think the final result ended up turning out really good. However, this design alone is not the only facet of this flying electric type Cyndaquil, because as I said, it's not just a cloud that envelops Cyndaquil's body, it is a storm cloud, and the concept behind this Pokemon is that when it is happy and when it is content, the storm cloud that surrounds Cyndaquil's body will be a nice white fluffy cloud, and it'll be able to float in the air without a care in the world. However, if you make Cyndaquil angry or upset in any way, these emotions will reflect in the color of the cloud that surrounds its body, and this will cause the cloud to turn dark like a storm cloud, and this will also cause electricity to come out of Cyndaquil's back in the form of small little lightning bolts. And this creates the image of lightning coming out of a storm cloud while also seamlessly working with what Cyndaquil's design already does, which is having the fire from its normal fire type protrude from its back, but this time around it's the electricity from its new electric type. So basically, we've got a nice, fluffy, and floaty storm cloud Cyndaquil, whose emotions are reflected in the storm cloud that surrounds its body, and when it is angry or upset in any way, that storm cloud turns into an actual storm cloud, and you see that signature elemental power appear out of Cyndaquil's back. But this time it is meant to resemble a thundering storm cloud with electricity coming out of its back instead. I don't want to toot my own horn too much, and honestly props to DarknWindie as well for being able to realize my idea and make it come to life, but I honestly feel like for as weird of a combination as the type and the Pokemon were here, I feel like I was able to come up with something that is honestly really cool and could actually work in a real Pokemon game despite how crazy it is. So just go ahead and add Flying Electric type Stormcloud Cyndaquil to the reasons why I love this Pokemon so much, because this shows that this Pokemon can look amazing even when it has a type that it clearly wasn't meant for. Now we get to move on to the really fun part of the video though, because this is where we are going to randomly determine a Pokemon and then randomly determine its type. And this one is definitely not holding anything back from us in the challenge department, because when I ran this random Pokemon generator, I ended up with Meltan. And then when I ran this random Pokemon type generator, I ended up with the normal type. So we're gonna have to somehow make a normal type Meltan. Now, at first, putting the normal type on pretty much any Pokemon wouldn't normally seem like it would be that hard, because it's the most standard basic type there is. However, as I came to find out, with a Pokemon like Meltan, who is one of the least normal looking Pokemon that exist, it's actually a lot harder than it sounds. Since Meltan is so unusual looking, it was really hard to figure out how to convert its body into a normal type Pokemon style. And because it's also a steel type and pretty much every part of its body is metal in some way, shape, or form, that also meant that we were basically more or less going to have to change Meltan's entire body from that of being comprised of metal to that of being comprised of something more organic and natural. And, well, I guess I might as well not beat around the bush anymore and just show you the final result of what we came up with. So go ahead and take a look at normal type Meltan. Now, I will be the first to admit that this is one of the strangest looking designs I personally have ever come up with. However, we were dealt one of the strangest concepts imaginable, as I just explained, and with all of that in mind, I feel like we were actually able to come up with something that is pretty ingenious given the circumstances. When I first was presented with this concept of a normal type Meltan, the one thing that I felt like could maybe translate pretty well is taking Meltan's singular eye and converting it into more of a traditional smiley face, because the classic smiley face is a very normal standard thing, and I feel like it expresses the same emotions that Meltan's very expressive eye also demonstrates. So that is where I started with this design, and then from there, I worked with DarknWindie to come up with something that somewhat made sense. And I gotta give credit to him in this department, because the overall concept that he ended up rolling with is something that I feel is pretty genius and pretty creative for what we're working with. Basically, we ended up taking Meltan's metal nut head and converting it into a button. Then we used the holes on that button to create the standard classic smiley face that I talked about wanting to incorporate. Then we took Meltan's mercury-based body and converted it into a lint body. And finally, for that wiry tail, we decided to go ahead and make it some string instead. So now Meltan, instead of being comprised of various forms of metal as a steel type, is now comprised of various normal household objects. It certainly doesn't look anything like Meltan, but I feel like all things considered, taking it from a steel to a normal type and taking this very strange and unique body that Meltan has and converting it into something that could be described as normal, I feel like we have done just about as creative and as solid of a job as we possibly could have in this situation. And once again, I gotta give it up to DarknWindie for coming up with that whole button concept, because I really feel like that was a really creative approach to this idea that also saved it from being a sort of mishmashed disaster due to the challenging nature of it. If nothing else though, this was a really fun challenge to take on, and I feel like we ended up coming up with some really good designs, all things considered. And now, with that said, I want to know what you guys think about these designs. Which one of them is your favorite, and do you like the various ideas and concepts that we came up with? Be sure to let me know in the comments below, leave a like on the video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe for more if you're new. Also again, be sure to check out War Thunder with the link below to play for free and also to grab that large bonus pack. And thanks again to them for sponsoring. With that said, I'll be back with another video very soon. Thanks so much for watching this one, and until then, as always, I will smell you guys later.